This video is brought to you by John Robson Guitar Tuition. If you enjoy the content, please consider supporting the channel by enrolling on a course, purchasing some guitar lessons or a t-shirt, or you can join my Patreon. Now, on with the show. Hello chaps, welcome once again to John Robson Guitar Tuition. As always, I do hope you're well, and I mean that especially in the current circumstances we find ourselves in. I've had a lot of emails from people asking how we are up here, and we're basically fine. If you look at Redcar and Cleveland, which is the part of the UK where we live, we're right at the bottom of the league table pretty much for the number of recorded cases up here, and frankly, long may it stay so. And, you know, we're all stocked up on all of the essentials, as you can see. Although I'm not entirely sure about the Andrex, to be honest. Is that essential? I'm not so sure. I mean, I'm sure that most of us lads, and I am speaking mainly to the lads here, we're all well acquainted with the old shower of shame from time to time. I'm sure we've all done that. Or if you're caught out in public, then there's always the old brown sock puppet routine, isn't there? And then when your mates see you, they go, well, hey, do you know you're only wearing one sock? And you go, shut up, it doesn't matter. Don't want to talk about it. Anyway, let's move on, shall we? In these troubled times that we find ourselves in, it has to be said, music is a fantastic escape, isn't it? You know, as a way of just distracting yourself and losing yourself in something much more pleasant than what you will find in the media. There's nothing at all that, in my mind, is anywhere near as satisfying as just listening to some music. So, today, what we're going to do is talk about what are my 6 albums that I turn to, or 6 of my favourite albums that I turn to when I need to just kind of raise me mood a bit, lift the spirits, and, you know, go to the nice place inside me head. So, let's get cracking with number 1.
Status Quo, live at the NEC.
Yes, now let's get this out of the way before we go any further. Status Quo are a band that it has never been cool to admit to liking. But look at me. Does this look like a person who is overly or even remotely bothered about how cool they are? I think you know the answer to that one. This album was, I think it came out in 82, and it's one of the 3 live albums that we're going to be talking about on this list today. It just, to me, sounds like the band and the audience are just a bunch of people in the same room together, and everybody's having a fantastic time. The joy and enthusiasm and just the good time that everyone is having just comes across brilliantly on this album, I think. It contains, as far as I'm concerned, the definitive versions of some of the Quo's biggest and best songs from their 70s heyday. And it's worth it alone, I think, for the version of Rockin' All Over the World that's on this album. Now, this may come as a surprise to many people, but Rockin' All Over the World isn't originally a Status Quo song. It's the original version is by John Fogerty, and I urge you to check it out. But this version on this album, for me, is up there with John Fogerty's version. Like everybody else, I knew the Status Quo version first, and then I discovered the John Fogerty version. And I would say, at the top of the tree, you've got this version, closely followed by John Fogerty's version, and then you've got the studio version by the Quo, which is still a great version of the song. But if you're just wanting to hear a band and an audience interacting and having a fantastic time, this album is where you want to go. And this track in particular, it's just good old-fashioned, legs apart, head down, Telecaster-driven rock and roll boogie, and there's nothing at all wrong with that. Next.
Steely Dan, Pretzel Logic.
Okay, Pretzel Logic. Now, this was a tough one. I knew I wanted a Steely Dan album in the list, and it was about a 3 or 4 way shootout between Pretzel Logic and the Royal Scam, and I do have a soft spot for the debut album as well, Can't Buy You Thrill. Load of great tracks on that. But in the end, I just couldn't not include an album that has, Ricky Don't Lose That Number, Any Major Dude Will Tell You, Parker's Band, East St. Louis Toodaloo. Some of my favourite Steely Dan tunes right there. And the thing about this album is that, again, what raises it above, just that little notch above other Steely Dan albums, is that, again, you get that sense of there is fun being had. Perhaps you hear that on other Steely Dan albums, I do, but this is the one where it's really obvious that the guys in the studio are having a blast as they're making this music. Like a couple of albums on this list, this has that quality that when you listen to it from beginning to end, you're left with the same feeling that you get when you've just finished watching a fantastic movie or reading an excellent novel, or even, when you've finished eating, a slap-up cordon bleu meal. You get that same feeling of being sated by it. And for the duration of the album, again, headphones, you really need headphones for this one. It just transports you to another place. So that's why this is on the list. Next.
Hot Club of Cowtown, Continental Stomp.
Yeah, the Hot Club of Cowtown. Now, I first encountered this 3-piece band. They are the lead singer, who is the lady in the group, and she also plays fiddle, and you've got a bass player and a guitarist, so no drums. And I first encountered them, years ago on the Jules Holland Hootenanny, which, if you're not in the UK, then maybe you don't know what that is. That is the big New Year's Eve TV show in the UK. And it's, they were on there as guests. Same show that sort of gave C6 Steve his big break as well, actually. They were on there as guests one year, and I was just mesmerised by it, by the performance. As their name suggests, the Hot Club of Cowtown, it's a mixture of that kind of Django Reinhardt, Stefan Grappelli, Hot Club Parisian style jazz with like a Western swing kind of feel to it. Bob Wills and the Texas Playboys, it's those two kind of styles of jazz or swing kind of just fused together in a fantastically inventive way that works really well. This is another live album and full of great tracks on it. The version of Ida Red that's on here is it's just toe-tapping ecstasy, really. It just makes you cannot sit still to this piece of music, or to any of them on this album. It's just fantastic, fantastic album. Again, people having a good time, and that is, if this isn't too indelicate a word to use at the moment, infectious. So check him out, Hot Club of Cowtown. That's a great album, Continental Stomp. Next.
Miles Davis, Kind of Blue.
Okay, Kind of Blue. Yes, now I could have just as easily chosen In a Silent Way, which is my other favourite Miles Davis album, but given that this one was my introduction to Miles Davis, I thought I'd go with this album here. It's a classic album. There is no getting away from it. If you don't know it, then I urge you to check it out, even if it's only just to decide that, well, this isn't really my cup of tea. It's a massively influential album as well. Who was it? Duane Allman was quite open about the fact that this album was a big influence on him. And if you listen to tracks like In Memory of Elizabeth Reed, for example, especially the live version from at the Fillmore East, then you got to kind of hear that crossover between the kind of cool jazz Miles Davis kind of vibe and what the Allmans were doing on that album in various tracks. So yes, it's an album that you need to listen to on headphones with a glass of something amber and intoxicating, and I might just be doing a little bit of that later myself. Again, another one of these albums that is both soothing and mesmerising. Whatever troubles are on your mind, whatever worries you've got, listen to this album and it won't make them disappear, but you'll have had some time off from them and maybe you'll feel a little bit better as a result. Next.
Peter Frampton, Frampton Comes Alive.
Okay, the other live album on the list, Frampton Comes Alive. I mean, what can I tell you about this? You know it all already. I'm sure most of you are well acquainted with this album. It's, for me, the definitive rock live album. Tracks like Show Me the Way, Do You Feel Like We Do, and an absolutely killer version of Jumpin' Jack Flash. Just, again, it's the audience and the band, a bunch of people in the same room, all kind of feeding off the same vibe and having a great time, and that shows on the album. It really does. It's just, I don't want to decry like the studio versions of a lot of the tracks on this album here, but again, just the live versions just have so much life and verve and enthusiasm and joy in them. And, throughout the whole album, you've got some masterful, melodic, inventive, tuneful, improvised lead guitar that is just a joy to behold or listen to. And, as far as making you kind of forget your troubles and just transport you to another place, this album will do it. Put the headphones on once again, turn the volume up, close your eyes and just watch the concert. That's the best way to listen to this album. Next.
Camel. Music inspired by the Snow Goose.
Yes, indeed. I think an album that should be as well recognised as Dark Side of the Moon, to be honest with you. This is the masterpiece from Camel, music inspired by the Snow Goose. It was written as a soundtrack album to a book, that's got to be a bit unique, hasn't it? The Paul Gallico novella, The Snow Goose, which I remember we did at school when I was in, however old I was. I was about 14, I think. And we did that book at school, and it was short enough. It was a novella, as I say. It was short enough that you could read through it in one entire double period of English, which the English teacher did, and he had the cassette of this album playing in the background, and that memory does stay with me. The title track alone from this album is worth the download price or the purchase price. It is just the most achingly beautiful, soulful melody, and to my ears as well, pretty much a textbook example of how a Gibson Les Paul should sound. Beautiful, beautiful album, fantastic musicianship, a lovely melodic instrumental suite of tunes that are well worth checking out. Another one of these albums actually that makes you feel sated and satisfied at the end of it, like you've just, as I said earlier, like you've finished a good book or watched a great film where all of the plot strands come together and it's very, very satisfying. Again, like all of these albums, another good one for headphones listen. You don't want to be distracted when you're listening to this. So there you go. Those are my 6 albums that will lift your mood and raise your spirits in troubled times. I hope you've maybe discovered something new here. Maybe, kind of decided to check out some albums that you were otherwise unaware of, or maybe go back and check out an album from your collection that you haven't listened to in a while and, rediscover it. And that, folks, is pretty much it for today. I do hope you've found this video entertaining in some small way, and if you have, then please hit the subscribe button and the notification bell, and why not give me a like while you're at it. If you'd like to support the channel, then links are in the description below to my Patreon. You can sign up for courses and all kinds of good stuff that help me keep the lights on around here. And with that, I'll just say thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your time, and I do look forward to seeing you all again next time round. Stay safe, folks. Bye for now.